Hey, I'm Hope. What's your name?
Booth number 9, the boy yelled, punching the table.
It's okay. I'll sit right here with you.
He threw a fork at her. She didn't flinch. He smashed his plate. A man yelled,
"Get that kid out of here!"
Hope knelt down, turned back with a pancake.
Be careful.
She cut it into perfect squares, one by one, slowly. The boy stopped yelling, picked up the fork, finished eating.
Well done, sweetie.
The girl only had $34 left to live on, with her grandmother waiting at home. She used that money to comfort the boy. The boy's father had witnessed it all. A $2.3 billion CEO witnessed a stranger accomplish what 6 therapists couldn't. And this act of kindness is about to give her a life she never knew. That morning, Hope had woken at 5:15 a.m. to the sound of her grandmother coughing. Not the normal kind, the kind that rattled the walls. She ran barefoot across the cold floor, the heater had been broken since October, and found Ruth Sullivan sitting up in bed, oxygen tube loose, lips turning pale, hands trembling. "Grandma, breathe. Slow." Hope fixed the tube. Checked the tank. Almost empty. One backup left. After that, nothing. She'd called the medical supply company last week. They said the same thing they always said. Pay the balance first. The balance was $1,200. She had $34. "I'm fine, baby," Ruth whispered. "Stop looking at me like I'm leaving." "You're not leaving." Hope lined up Ruth's medication, 7 pills 3 times a day, made oatmeal, kissed her forehead, and headed for the door. Ruth grabbed her wrist. "You're 24. You should be worrying about your own life." "You are my life, Grandma." The 6 a.m. bus. 45 minutes, standing. Hope watched a free lecture on her cracked phone. A professor explaining how autistic children respond to routine and pattern. She'd been volunteering at her church's special needs program since she was 16. No degree, no certificate, just 8 years of sitting on floors, holding hands, learning to be still when the world was too loud for someone else. At the diner, Carl Anderson was waiting. "Hope, I gotta cut your hours. 3 shifts instead of 5. 3 shifts. Less than $400 a month. Rent was $600. Ruth's medication, $350. Oxygen refill, $200. She was already 2 months behind on electricity. The math didn't work. It never did. "Okay," she said. 3 shifts. She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She tied her apron and walked to the floor. Tommy Davis, the line cook, slid a plate toward her. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You always say that." "Because I always am." That evening, a man walked in with a boy. Good shoes, expensive watch. He sat the boy in booth 9, ordered pancakes. Phone rang. He stepped outside. And everything changed. After Hope calmed Ethan, the man returned. He stood over the booth, studying her, eyes moving from her face to her apron to the boy. "Thank you," he said, flat, guarded. He just needed the food to look right. Gerald Moore sat down. His mind was already running. He'd been lied to his whole life. A partner who stole $12 million. A nanny who sold Ethan's photos to a tabloid. A friend who tried to get guardianship of Ethan, not for love, but for access to Gerald's money. After Eleanor died, the vultures came. Everyone wanted to help. Everyone had an angle. So when a stranger was kind to his son, Gerald's instinct wasn't gratitude. It was, what does she want? Hope was wiping syrup off the table. She didn't glance at his watch. She didn't look at anything except the boy. Gerald leaned forward, dropped his voice. "I'm Jerry, single dad, truck driver, Just moved here. I'm having a hard time with my boy. Can't afford specialists. He waited. If her eyes dimmed at truck driver and can't afford, he'd know. Her eyes didn't dim. They softened. What's his name? Ethan. She looked at the boy, tapped the table gently, 3 times. Ethan looked up. Hi, Ethan. He didn't speak, but he didn't look away. Gerald stared. She'd passed the first test, but he didn't trust one test. Can we come back? He seems to like you. I'm here every day except Sunday. Gerald paid, left a $15 tip, generous for a broke truck driver. Outside, he buckled Ethan into a borrowed pickup. His Escalade sat in storage 20 miles away. He called Nora Williams on a burner phone. A waitress helped Ethan. I need to know if she's genuine. Or you could just say thank you like a normal person. Normal people don't have $2.3 billion worth of reasons to be suspicious. That night, Hope told Ruth about the boy. Ruth listened, then said, "Sounds like God put him in your booth for a reason." Hope didn't answer. She was staring at the eviction notice she'd hidden under a stack of bills. 3 shifts a week. A grandmother on oxygen. An empty tank. No refill coming. And tomorrow she'd tie her apron and smile like nothing was wrong. Because that's what Hope Sullivan did. She carried everything and complained about nothing. 3 days later, the man came back. Same flannel shirt, same beat-up truck, same boy. But this time, something was different. Ethan walked through the door and stopped. He scanned the room, past the counter, past the booths, past the customers, until his eyes found her. Then he walked straight to Hope and reached for her hand. The diner went silent. Tommy froze behind the kitchen window. Carl Anderson stopped wiping the counter. A woman at table 4 put her coffee down. This boy, the same boy who had thrown a fork, smashed a plate, screamed until his face turned red, had just walked across a room full of strangers and grabbed a waitress's hand. Gerald stood in the doorway. His legs wouldn't move. "He doesn't do that," he said. His voice cracked. "He doesn't go to people. 6 therapists, 2 years, not one of them could get him to do that." Hope knelt down. She didn't force eye contact. She held Ethan's hand and tapped his palm, 3 times, soft and steady. Ethan tapped back, 3 times. Gerald's chest tightened. He'd spent $80,000 on specialists with degrees and treatment plans. Not one of them thought to just hold his son's hand and tap. He sat down in the booth. The lie came easier this time. "Listen, I lost my wife 2 years ago. Can't hold a job because Ethan needs constant care. Insurance dropped us. We've been moving from town to town, just trying to survive." Every word was fiction, but he watched Hope's face like a man reading a verdict. Hope didn't look at him with pity. She looked at him with recognition, like she knew what it meant to carry something too heavy to put down, but too precious to let go. "Would you," Gerald hesitated, "would you be willing to spend some time with him, outside of work? I can pay you $50 a week. It's all I got." Hope looked at this tired man in his worn-out flannel. She looked at the boy still holding her hand. "Keep your money, Jerry. I'll come on my days off." Gerald stared at her. She had $34. He knew. Nora had already done a background check. $34, an eviction notice, a dying grandmother, and she just turned down money from a man she thought had nothing. He called Nora that night. She refused the money. Good, so she passed. I don't know yet. Gerald, You know. You just don't want to admit it because then you'd have to trust someone. Silence. That same week, Hope's world got smaller. The letter came on a Wednesday. Ruth's home care insurance? Reduced. New monthly gap? $1,800. More than Hope made in 2 months on 3 shifts. She sat at the kitchen table that night with a calculator and a stack of bills. Rent, medication, oxygen, electricity, food. No matter how she arranged the numbers, there were always more bills than dollars. Thursday morning, she walked into a pawn shop on 5th Street. She placed her mother's bracelet on the counter, a thin gold chain with a small heart pendant, the only thing she had left of the woman who gave birth to her and died before Hope turned 3. The man behind the counter turned it over. $60. She took it. She used $45 to buy sensory toys, textured fabrics, and wooden blocks for Ethan. She picked each item carefully, smooth surfaces, soft edges, nothing that would overwhelm. She spent money from selling her dead mother's bracelet on a stranger's child. Let that sit for a second. Saturday morning, she showed up at Jerry's rented house with 2 plastic bags. Gerald opened the door. "Where'd you get all that?" "Dollar store had a sale," she lied. She smiled when she said it, like it was nothing, like she hadn't just sold the last piece of her mother to buy blocks for a boy she'd met twice. She lied to protect a man who was lying to her. Neither of them knew it yet. Gerald watched her set up the living room, arranging blocks by color, laying out fabrics by texture, building a small, organized world for his son to feel safe in. He called Nora that night. His voice was barely a whisper. She spent her own money. She refused mine and spent her own. Hope didn't have a method. She had patience. Every Saturday, she showed up at Jerry's rented house at 9 a.m. sharp. Same 2 plastic bags, whatever she could afford that week. Sometimes new blocks, sometimes just crayons and paper. Once, she brought Ruth's old wooden spoons because she'd noticed Ethan flinched at plastic, but relaxed when he held something smooth and wooden. She watched him the way most people don't bother to watch, not with clinical distance, with curiosity, with care. She noticed he calmed down when things came in patterns, so she built patterns everywhere, tapping rhythms on the table, arranging blocks in rows of 3, cutting food into identical pieces. She turned the chaos of his world into something predictable. She noticed he couldn't say what he needed, so she invented a language. She sat beside him and drew simple pictures. An apple meant hungry. A bed meant tired. A door meant outside. She slid the paper to him. He stared at it for a long time. Then, one Saturday, he picked up a crayon and drew a circle and pointed at his cup. Circle meant water. Ethan was talking, not with words, but talking. She created a tapping system, their private code. 1 tap, yes. 2 taps, no. 3 taps, I'm okay, I'm here. When Ethan had meltdowns, throwing things, screaming until his throat went raw, Hope didn't restrain him. She didn't leave. She didn't panic. She sat on the floor beside him, cross-legged, silent, still. Like a rock in a river, letting the current crash around her until it slowed on its own. When the screaming stopped, she'd tap his palm 3 times. He'd tap back. Every single time. Gerald watched all of this from the kitchen doorway. He'd hired therapists with PhDs, published research, $500 an hour rates. Not one of them sat on the floor. Not one of them waited. He called Nora after every session. She's doing things no specialist ever tried. And she still thinks you're broke? Yes. This has to stop, Gerald. Not yet. 4 weeks in, a Saturday like any other. Hope was cutting apple slices for Ethan. Same routine, same size, arranged in a circle on the plate because he liked circles now. Ethan picked up a slice, ate it, reached for another. Then he stopped. He looked at the empty spot on the plate, looked at Hope, and said, "More." Hope's knife stopped mid-cut. Gerald, leaning against the kitchen door frame, dropped the glass he was holding. It shattered on the tile. "More," Ethan said again. Quiet, clear. Hope's eyes filled. She cut another slice, placed it on the plate. Her voice barely held together. "There you go, baby. More." Gerald sat down at the table, pressed his hand over his mouth. His shoulders shook. His son had just spoken. After 2 years of silence. Not in a clinic, not with a specialist. In a rented kitchen, with a waitress who earned $4.50 an hour. That night, Gerald called Nora. His voice broke on the first word. She got him to talk. 4 weeks, Nora. 4 weeks. So she's real. Gerald closed his eyes. She's real. He believed it now, completely. But he still didn't tell Hope who he was. Not because he doubted her, but because he was terrified. Right now, Hope treated Ethan like family. If she knew he was worth $2.3 billion, everything might change. She might become careful, professional, distant. He couldn't risk that. Not when his son had just said his first word. So the lie continued, and the trap got deeper. The weeks blurred together, and Ethan kept speaking. More became no. No became eat. Eat became home. And then, on a Tuesday evening, while Hope was packing up after a session, Ethan looked at her from across the room and said, "Hope." She turned around. "What did you say?" "Hope." Her name. Her name was his third word. Gerald was in the kitchen. He heard it. He set down the pan he was holding very carefully, walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and cried. His son had learned 6 words. More. No. Eat. Hope. Home. Daddy. Hope came before Daddy. Gerald didn't know what to do with that. So he stood in the bathroom with his back against the door and let it hit him. The full weight of what this woman was doing for his son. For free. While she was drowning. Because Hope was drowning. She'd lost another shift at the diner. Carl felt terrible, but the numbers didn't lie. Business was down 40% since the new highway bypass opened. 2 shifts a week now. Less than $250 a month. She hadn't paid rent in 2 months. The eviction notice had turned into a final warning. The landlord had knocked twice. The second time he didn't knock. He taped the notice to her door, where all the neighbors could see it. She pulled it down before Ruth could read it. Ruth's oxygen tank ran out on a Thursday night. Hope drove to 3 pharmacies before she found one that would let her put a refill on a payment plan. She signed the paper at 11 p.m., hands shaking, knowing she had no idea how she'd make the first payment. She ate once a day, sometimes just whatever was left on plates at the diner before she bussed them. She told herself it wasn't that bad. She told Tommy she wasn't hungry. She told Ruth she'd already eaten. She lied to everyone, about everything, except Ethan. With Ethan, she was completely honest. She gave him every ounce of energy she had left, and some she didn't. Tommy noticed. He cornered her behind the kitchen one morning. "You've lost weight." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're disappearing. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" "Tommy, drop it." He didn't drop it. He started leaving extra food on the counter, a sandwich wrapped in foil, a container of soup, once an entire plate of chicken and rice shoved to the back of the fridge with a note that said, "Don't throw out." He never mentioned it. She never said thank you. They both pretended it wasn't happening. Ethan's progress continued. Each week brought something new. One afternoon, he pointed at a dog through the window and said, "Dog," unprompted, to nobody. Gerald nearly crashed the borrowed truck, calling Hope to tell her. He said dog. He just said dog. To no one. He just said it. Hope laughed. A real laugh, the kind she hadn't made in weeks. "That's huge, Jerry. That's so huge." Ethan's drawings got more complex. Not just circles and lines, figures. A brown figure and a small figure, side by side, always together. Hope and Ethan. That's how he saw his world now. The tapping transferred too. At bedtime, Ethan tapped Gerald's palm 3 times. Gerald tapped back. It became their goodnight ritual. Hope had given them a language, and now it was spreading into spaces she wasn't even in. By the end of the 2nd month, Ethan had 15 words. By the end of the 3rd, 20. He could say hope, daddy, home, more, eat, no, dog, water, please, book. Each word was a small miracle. Each one had been earned on a living room floor by a woman who couldn't afford to eat. One Sunday, Hope brought Ethan to church. Pastor James Brown watched from the pulpit as Ethan sat in the pew, holding Hope's hand, tapping her palm during the hymns. 3 taps. 3 taps. 3 taps. Their rhythm, steady as a heartbeat. After the service, the congregation gathered. They'd watched Hope volunteer with special needs kids for years. But this was different. This boy was attached to her in a way none of them had seen before. Ruth came in her wheelchair, oxygen tube in her nose, Bible in her lap. She wheeled herself right up to Ethan and held out her hand. Ethan studied her. This new person, this stranger with tubes and wrinkles and a voice he'd never heard. He reached out and tapped her palm. 3 times. Ruth's eyes filled. Her chin trembled. She looked at Hope, then back at the boy. "Oh, this child speaks just fine. You just got to learn his language." Hope bit her lip. She would not cry in church. She would not. She cried in church. Gerald picked Ethan up afterward. He saw the church, the community, the way every person in that parking lot greeted Hope by name. The old women hugging her, the kids running to her, the pastor shaking her hand like she was the most important person in the building. This wasn't a performance. This was her life. She was the same person whether a billionaire was watching or not. "You ever think about doing this for real?" Gerald asked. "Professionally?" Hope buckled Ethan into his seat. "Every day." "So why don't you?" She smiled, the kind of smile that carried weight. "Dreams don't pay rent, Jerry." Gerald drove home in silence. He could change her life with one phone call. But the longer the lie lived, the harder the truth got. That week, the cracks started showing. Gerald's phone rang during a session. The screen flashed Grandview HQ before he could grab it. Hope saw the name. She Googled it later. Grandview Enterprises, major logistics company. Didn't connect it to Jerry. Why would she? He slipped with his language. Stakeholder engagement once. Quarterly projections another time. Hope tilted her head the way she did when something didn't add up. New sensory equipment appeared. High-end stuff in premium packaging. A weighted compression vest that retailed for $180. Where'd this come from? Hope asked. Craigslist, Gerald said. Too fast. Hope looked at him a beat too long, then let it go. Nora accidentally called the house. Hope answered. Hello? Click. Deadline. Jerry, someone called and hung up. Scam call. Hope nodded. But she didn't stop looking at the phone. Each crack was small, forgettable on its own, but they were adding up. Quiet proof that something about Jerry's story didn't fit. And those same cracks, the phone, the language, the expensive equipment, the hang-up call, someone else would notice them too. Someone who wasn't as forgiving as Hope. Someone who was already watching. For a little while, things felt almost okay. Saturdays became sacred. Hope arrived at 9. Gerald cooked while she worked with Ethan. They fell into a rhythm, the three of them, like a song that nobody had written but everyone knew the words to. Ethan's vocabulary hit 20 words. He said home the first time he walked into Hope's apartment. He said grandma the first time Ruth handed him a cookie. Ruth nearly dropped her oxygen tube. He called me grandma, she whispered to Hope that night. That boy called me grandma. I heard, grandma. Don't you get smart with me. Gerald started laughing during dinners. Real laughter, the kind that came from the gut, not from politeness. He hadn't laughed like that since Eleanor. Hope told stories about the diner, the regulars, Tommy's terrible jokes, the time Carl accidentally served decaf to the entire morning rush and didn't understand why everyone was falling asleep. Gerald told stories too, carefully edited ones. Truck routes he'd never driven, towns he'd never lived in, a life he'd never lived. The lies came so naturally now that sometimes he forgot they were lies. One evening, Ethan fell asleep on the couch between them, his head on Hope's lap, his feet on Gerald's leg. The television was off. The house was quiet. Just the sound of a boy breathing. Gerald looked at Hope. Why do you do this? You don't owe us anything. Hope was stroking Ethan's hair. She didn't look up. My grandmother always says, the world doesn't owe you kindness. That's exactly why you give it away. Gerald was quiet for a long time. She sounds like someone I would have liked to know. She would have fed you. She feeds everybody. They sat there, two people on a couch with a sleeping child between them. One of them had $2.3 billion. The other couldn't make rent. And in that moment, none of it mattered. But moments don't last. And the person who was watching? She'd seen enough. She'd made her decision. And what she was about to do would tear all of this apart. Every Saturday, every word, every tap, and leave Hope Sullivan standing in the wreckage, wondering what she did wrong. Victoria Caldwell arrived on a Wednesday. She drove a silver Mercedes, parked it 2 blocks from the rented house, and watched from behind tinted windows. She'd been Eleanor's sister. She'd been fighting for custody of Ethan for 2 years. And she'd heard through a family contact that Gerald had been spending time in some rural town with a woman involved with Ethan. Victoria didn't call Gerald. She didn't ask questions. She drove straight there. What she saw? A small rundown house, a beat-up pickup truck, and a young black woman walking up the front steps with a key, letting herself inside, alone with a white child. Victoria watched for 2 hours. She saw Hope through the window, sitting on the floor with Ethan, arranging blocks, drawing pictures, tapping his palm. She saw the boy laugh. She saw the woman hold him. Victoria didn't see love. She saw danger. She asked around town. At the diner, she introduced herself as a concerned family member. She asked about Hope. Hope? She's the best person in this town, Carl Anderson said. She's been spending a lot of time with a man and his son, Victoria pressed. Don't you think that's unusual? Carl stared at her. I think it's kind. But Victoria found what she was looking for at the gas station. A woman filling up her tank said, "Yeah, I've seen her going in and out of that house, alone with that kid for hours. It's a little strange if you ask me." That was enough. Victoria didn't talk to Hope, didn't talk to Gerald, didn't watch a single session, didn't see the drawings, the tapping, the 20 words. She filed a complaint with Child Protective Services. The complaint stated, an unqualified, unlicensed stranger was providing unauthorized therapy to a vulnerable, special needs child. The father appeared financially unstable. The woman's motives were unclear and potentially exploitative. CPS sent 2 workers the following Tuesday. They arrived at 2 p.m. Gerald was out, buying groceries, part of the struggling dad routine he'd perfected. Hope was on the living room floor with Ethan. They were drawing. Ethan had just drawn a picture of a house with 2 figures inside, a brown one and a small one. He was humming, a sound he only made when he was calm. The knock came. Hope opened the door. 2 women in business clothes, lanyards, clipboards. "Are you Hope Sullivan?" "Yes." "We're from Child Protective Services. We've received a complaint regarding the welfare of a minor at this address. We need to speak with the child's father and evaluate the living environment." Hope's stomach dropped, but her face stayed still. "His father isn't here right now. He went to the store." "What is your relationship to the child?" Hope looked back at Ethan. He was still drawing, still humming. "I'm his friend." The CPS worker wrote something down. "Are you a licensed therapist?" "No." "Do you have any professional certification in childcare or special education?" "No." "How long have you been seeing this child unsupervised?" "About 3 months." The workers exchanged a look. The kind of look Hope had seen before. The kind people give when they've already made up their minds. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to step away from the child until this investigation is resolved." "Step away?" "You cannot have unsupervised contact with the minor until we've completed our evaluation." Hope stood in the middle of the living room. She looked at the blocks on the floor, the drawings, the crayons, the wooden spoons from Ruth's kitchen. 3 months of work. 3 months of words. 3 months of taps. "Okay," she said, because what else could she say? She walked toward the door. Ethan looked up from his drawing. He saw her moving away. His humming stopped. "Hope?" She stopped. "Hope?" He stood up, walked toward her, reached for her hand. "I have to go, sweetheart, just for a little while." Ethan grabbed her fingers. She gently pulled them free, one by one. He screamed. Not a tantrum, not a meltdown, a scream that came from somewhere deeper. The sound of a child who had finally found the one person who understood him, watching her walk away. Hope stood on the porch. The door closed behind her. She could hear him screaming through the wood. Her hands were shaking. Her jaw was locked. Every cell in her body was telling her to go back inside. She didn't. Because going back would make it worse. She knew the system. She knew how it worked. A young black woman forcing her way back into a house with a white child during a CPS investigation. She knew exactly how that story would end. So she walked to the bus stop, sat down, and stared at nothing. Gerald came home 20 minutes later, grocery bags in hand, CPS workers in his living room, his son on the floor, rocking, silent. The screaming burned out of him. They explained the complaint. Gerald's vision went red. But he was trapped. If he revealed his real identity now... "Actually, I'm a billionaire CEO who's been pretending to be poor for 3 months." It wouldn't clear Hope. It would make everything worse. It would look like an elaborate scheme involving a child. He called Hope that night. "They think I'm hurting him, Jerry." Her voice was flat, empty. "They think I'm using him." "You know that's not true." "What I know doesn't matter. What they believe does." Tommy sat with her on Ruth's porch that evening. He didn't say much, just sat there. Ruth called from inside. "Hope, you didn't do wrong. Don't you sit out there getting small." Over the next 3 days, Gerald watched his son vanish. Ethan stopped saying Hope. Then he stopped saying Daddy. Then he stopped saying anything at all. The 20 words, gone. The drawings, gone. The tapping. He wouldn't even look at Gerald's hand. He sat in the corner of the living room, rocking, staring at nothing. The same boy he'd been before Hope walked into booth 9. 3 months of progress, erased in 72 hours. Gerald sat on the kitchen floor of the rented house, the same floor where Hope used to sit during Ethan's meltdowns, and called Nora. "I caused this. My lie caused this." Nora didn't comfort him. She didn't soften it. "Then end the lie, Gerald. Right now. Before you lose them both." Gerald didn't sleep that night. He sat in the rented house, the house that was never really his, in the life that was never really his, and made a list. Not on paper, in his head. The kind of list a man makes when he's about to blow up everything he built. Step 1, tell Hope. Step 2, tell CPS. Step 3, face Victoria. Step 4, live with the consequences. He called his personal attorney at 6 a.m., then his corporate legal team, then Nora. "I'm ending it today." "Good," Nora said. "What do you need?" "Everything. Every piece of evidence that proves Hope Sullivan is exactly who she says she is." By noon, Gerald had assembled it all. Video recordings, time-stamped, that he'd been taking from the kitchen doorway for 3 months. First clip, Ethan, rocking, nonverbal, unreachable. Last clip, Ethan saying, "Hope, more please," and laughing. The transformation was undeniable. Written reports from 6 previous therapists, all confirming 2 years of zero progress. 2 of them had recommended residential placement. All 6 had given up. Financial records proving Hope had received no significant money from him. No payments, no transfers, no gifts. She had refused the $50 a week he offered. She had spent her own money from selling her dead mother's bracelet, on supplies for his son. Character testimony. Signed letters from Pastor James Brown, Carl Anderson, Tommy Davis, and 5 church members who had known Hope Sullivan for years. He had the evidence. Now came the hard part. He called Hope at 9 p.m. She was sitting in the dark. Ruth was asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the oxygen machine. "I need to tell you something," Gerald said, "and I need you to let me finish before you say anything." Silence. "My name isn't Jerry. It's Gerald Moore. I'm the CEO of Grandview Enterprises. My net worth is $2.3 billion. Silence. "The flannel, the truck, the house, it's all a disguise. I've been pretending." Silence. "When I walked back into that diner and saw you with my son, my first thought was, she knows who I am. She's playing me. Because that's what people do. They always want something. So I decided to pretend I had nothing and see if you'd still care." He paused. "You cared more." The silence on Hope's end lasted so long that Gerald checked if the call had dropped. Then she spoke. Quiet, steady, like a blade wrapped in cloth. "So every time I turn down your money, Every time I bought Ethan something with my own paycheck, you could have paid for all of it. Yes. You could have paid for my grandmother's oxygen. Yes. You could have paid my rent, my electricity. You could have stopped the eviction. Yes. You watched me sell my mother's bracelet, the only thing I had left of her, so I could buy your son some blocks. And the whole time, you had $2.3 billion. Gerald closed his eyes. Yes. Why? Because I needed to know you were real. And what did that cost, Gerald? What did it cost to find out I was real? Her voice cracked for the first time. It cost me everything. My bracelet, my rent, my dignity. 3 months of my life that I gave for free. Not because I'm stupid, but because I thought I was helping someone who actually needed me. You were helping someone who needed you. Ethan needed you. Ethan needed me. You didn't. You just needed proof. And I was your experiment. Gerald had no answer, because she was right. You know what hurts the most, Hope said? It's not the money. It's that I thought you were someone who needed me. I thought I was the one person who could help when nobody else would. And the whole time, you had everything. You took away the one thing I had to give. The feeling that what I did mattered to someone who truly needed it. It did matter, Hope. More than anything I've ever paid for. Ethan speaks because of you. That's not a test result. That's real. I didn't do it for you, Gerald. I did it for Ethan. I know. That's why I'm going to fix this. You can't fix trust. She hung up. The apartment went quiet again, just the oxygen machine, humming. Ruth's voice came from the bedroom, soft. Baby, you okay? Hope pressed the phone against her chest. No, Grandma, but I think I will be. Gerald Moore walked into the CPS office at 9 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Not in flannel, not in work boots, not in the costume of a man who couldn't afford milk. 3-piece suit, Italian shoes, a Patek Philippe watch worth more than the building he was standing in. His attorney on his right, Nora Williams on his left. The receptionist looked up. Can I help you? My name is Gerald Moore. I'm here about case number 2024-3891, the complaint filed against Hope Sullivan. The supervisor came out within 2 minutes. She recognized the name. She'd seen it on Forbes. Mr. Moore? The Gerald Moore? Yes, and the man whose son is the subject of that complaint is me. I'm Ethan's father. The supervisor looked at his suit, looked at the case file, looked back at him. Sir, the complaint describes the father as a low-income truck driver. I know, because that's what I told everyone. I lied. I disguised my identity for 3 months, and the only person who did nothing wrong in any of this is Hope Sullivan. The supervisor leaned back. You're telling me you impersonated a low-income father for 3 months? Yes. With a child involved? Yes. And I understand how that sounds, which is why I brought everything you need to verify every word. Gerald laid it all out. Everything. Eleanor's death. Ethan's condition. 6 therapists. 0 progress. The diner. Hope cutting pancakes into perfect squares. His suspicion. The disguise. The test that became a trap. He took full responsibility. No spin. No lawyers talking for him. I created this situation. My deception triggered this complaint. The woman you're investigating gave my son something I couldn't buy. and I repaid her by letting the system treat her like a criminal. Then he presented the evidence. The video compilation. First clip. Ethan 3 months ago, rocking, nonverbal, unreachable, staring at a wall. Last clip. Ethan 2 weeks ago, sitting at a table, saying, "Hope, more please," laughing when she tapped his palm. The CPS supervisor watched the screen without blinking. Her pen stopped moving. The therapist reports. 6 professionals, 2 years, combined cost over $80,000. Result? 0 words. Then, Hope. 4 weeks, first word. 3 months, 20 words. No degree, no license, no payment. The financial records. Hope Sullivan had received no money from Gerald Moore. She had refused the $50 a week he offered. She had spent her own income, including money from pawning her dead mother's bracelet, on sensory supplies for his son. Character testimony. Signed letters from Pastor James Brown, Carl Anderson, Tommy Davis, and 5 members of Hope's church community, people who had known her for years and watched her volunteer with special needs children since she was 16. Gerald looked at the supervisor. "You received a complaint that an unqualified woman was endangering my child. I'm here to tell you she is the most qualified person my son has ever known. She didn't have a degree. She had patience. She had instinct. She had love. And she gave all of it for free to a man she thought was broke while her own life was falling apart." The room was silent. The attorney, Nora, the supervisor. Nobody moved. CPS reviewed the evidence, cross-referenced the timeline, confirmed the identity. Case dismissed, fully cleared. Hope Sullivan's name? Clean. That afternoon, Gerald drove to the rented house. Victoria was already there. She'd heard Gerald was back in town and wanted to discuss next steps for Ethan's care. She wasn't expecting the suit. "Gerald, what is this?" "Sit down, Victoria." Nora stood by the door. Witness. Gerald didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You saw a black woman caring for a white child, and your first instinct was to call the authorities. You didn't ask me. You didn't talk to her. You didn't watch a single session. You didn't see him say his first word. You didn't see him laugh. You didn't see him hold her hand. You saw skin color, and you saw danger. That's not protection, Victoria. That's prejudice." Victoria's mouth opened. "I was trying to protect Ethan." She got him to speak in 4 weeks, something your protection couldn't do in 2 years. And when you pulled her away, he stopped talking. He stopped eating. He went back to silence. That's what your protection did. Gerald leaned forward. "Kindness with nothing to gain? That's the only kind that counts. Hope had nothing to gain and gave everything. You had everything to give and chose cruelty." Victoria didn't respond. She picked up her purse, walked to her car, and sat there for a long time. She pulled up a photo of Eleanor on her phone and stared at it. She didn't cry, but something shifted behind her eyes. The slow, heavy recognition of a woman realizing she had become the thing she feared. That evening, Gerald drove to Hope's apartment. No entourage, no limo. He parked the borrowed truck, because the lie should end the way it started. He knocked. Hope opened the door. She looked at the suit, looked at the truck behind him, said nothing. He sat at her kitchen table, the small, worn table with the cracked edge and the water stain. The table where Ruth took her pills. The table where Hope had done the math that never worked. the table where Ethan's drawings were taped to the refrigerator behind it. A brown figure and a small figure, side by side. I spent my whole life thinking everyone wanted something from me, Gerald said. When you proved me wrong, I kept testing instead of thanking. That's my failure, not yours. Hope sat across from him, arms folded, eyes dry. CPS cleared you, completely. Your name is clean. She nodded, once. Victoria knows what she did. She won't be filing anything again. Another nod. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just need you to know that what you did for Ethan, it was the most real thing that's happened in my life since Eleanor died. And I almost destroyed it because I couldn't believe someone could be kind without a reason. Hope unfolded her arms, not softening, just tired. I believe Ethan is real, she said. Everything between me and that boy, that was real. That's enough for now. Gerald reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Thick, heavy. He set it on the table between them. When you're ready. Hope looked at the envelope. She didn't touch it. Gerald stood up, looked at the drawings on the fridge one more time. The brown figure, the small figure, always together. Hope? She looked up. I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry that fixes things. The kind that knows it can't. He walked out, closed the door behind him. Hope sat at the table alone, the envelope in front of her, the oxygen machine humming in the next room, Ruth breathing, the apartment quiet. She didn't open it, not yet. She just sat there in the silence and let the weight of 3 months finally land. She opened it at midnight. Ruth was asleep. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light, the one with the flickering bulb Hope kept meaning to replace but couldn't afford. She sat at the table, slid her finger under the flap, pulled out the contents. A check. She looked at the number, looked again, held it closer to the light because she thought she was miscounting zeros. $500,000. A note clipped to it. For Ruth, she raised you. Let me take care of her. Full-time nurse, all medications, all equipment, everything. Behind the check, a letter on university letterhead. A full scholarship to a 4-year program in early childhood special education. Tuition, books, living expenses, transportation. Every line item covered. Behind the letter, a job offer. Director of the Grandview Foundation's new Children's Development Initiative. A national program designed to bring community-based, compassionate care to special needs children across the country. Starting after graduation, full salary, full benefits, creative control. Behind the job offer, a handwritten note. Gerald's handwriting. Uneven, like he'd written it more than once. Kindness with nothing to gain. That's the only kind that counts. You taught me that. Now let me give something back. Gerald. Hope read it again, pressed the note against her chest and closed her eyes. She stood up, walked to Ruth's bedroom. Ruth was awake. She was always awake when Hope needed her to be. Hope set the check on her lap. Ruth reached for her glasses, put them on, read the number, took the glasses off, put them back on, read it again. She looked at Hope over the rims. Baby, what on earth did you do? Hope smiled, the kind of smile that breaks and heals at the same time. I cut some pancakes, Grandma. 6 months later, Gerald's kitchen. Not the rented house, his real home. Warm light, Ethan's drawings covering every wall, crayons on the counter, wooden blocks stacked in the corner. Hope walked in carrying a bag of groceries and a textbook under her arm. First semester of college. She looked different. Not richer, not fancier, just lighter, like someone who'd finally set something heavy down. Ethan saw her from across the room. He stood up from the table, walked toward her, and in a clear, full sentence, the kind that 3 months ago was impossible and 6 therapists said might never come, he said, "Hope, I made something for you." He held up a drawing. 3 figures standing inside a house. A tall one, a small one, a brown one. Above them, in wobbly handwriting, one word. Family. Hope knelt down, took the drawing, held the boy. Gerald stood in the doorway. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. She didn't save him. He didn't save her. They found each other at a booth in a roadside diner on a rainy Tuesday night, and neither one let go. Gerald Moore had $2.3 billion and couldn't buy what his son needed. Hope Sullivan had $34 and gave it freely. The world tested her. Poverty, suspicion, a man who hid behind a lie because he couldn't believe kindness was real. Every time she chose the same thing. Show up. Be kind. She didn't pass a test. She proved some people don't need one. Ethan's drawing, 3 figures, 1 word, family, is still on Hope's refrigerator, next to her college letter, and a photo of Ruth, smiling.
Something about this story won't leave me had. 6 therapists, $80,000, 2 years, razor worse, and then Waitress with $34 in her pocket sat on the floor, held a little boy's hand, and she started talking. No degree, no certification, no fancy method, just patience, the presence, the love, and that taught me something. The world tells us we need 2 qualifications to care. We need a title to have. We need permission to make a difference. But that's a lie. The most powerful thing you can give someone isn't your resume. It's your time, your attention, your willingness to sit on the floor and just be there. That's it. And sometimes that's worth more than any degree money can buy. But here's what really gets me. Hope was drowning. Empty fridge. Eviction notice. Grandma's oxygen running out. And she still show up every Saturday for free because it's never about her. It was about a little boy who needed somebody to stay, and she stayed. Stop telling yourself you are not qualified enough to have. Stop waiting until your whole life is perfect before you show up for someone else. It never be perfect. Show up anyway. Like, share, and subscribe. Real stories, real justice every week. And remember, you don't need a degree to change your life. You just need to stay when everyone else leaves.